Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, the Tantalus System channel, transforming utilities and communities. Joining us today, as always, the Chief Executive Officer, Peter Londo. Welcome back, sir.
Thanks, Kyle. Good to see you.
You as well. And I'm very excited for this conversation as we were discussing that this massive transition that we're about to see in the utility grid as EVs kind of start sucking up more power than I think people are anticipating. And it's nice to see you guys forefronting this. So first and foremost, I mean, you forecasted 20 to 25% revenue growth in 2022 with record revenue backlog. Can you kind of first iterate on this a little bit and offer some insight?
Sure. So part of it ties to just increased activity that we are witnessing in our sales pipeline, and frankly, with utilities that are very motivated to start upgrading and modernizing their grid in anticipation of and in preparation of the adoption of electric vehicles and other distributed energy resources. So a good chunk of it just ties to activity, and relative to our success in our market segment of helping public power and electric cooperative utilities in particular, just being in the right place at the right time, I think, relative to how utilities are really ramping up. There's also an element that is, I think the increased activity ties to some of the stimulus funding and the amount of attention, resiliency and reliability are at the forefront. Almost every week now in the United States, it seems like there's another storm moving through a portion of the US. And right behind that message about the storm is power outages or concern around power outages. It's where the government's going to throw a lot of money, a portion of which is already accessible to utilities, a portion of which is still to be rolled out. But we're seeing, I think, some of those dollars flow through that's motivating utilities. And then there's an element also within that backlog of just given supply chain constraints for microprocessors or other electronic components that our devices rely upon. We saw some of our backlog in 2021 just move into 2022. So there were some delays that frankly bolster visibility and will bolster growth this calendar year. So it's really the combination of those three.
Okay, so yeah, it's pretty insightful. I appreciate that. I wouldn't mind expanding a little farther because Tantalus acquires Congruitive to accelerate the digitization of the electric grid to help prepare for the impact of these EVs. Now, Congruitive, what is that company? How does that add value to Tantalus? And just break that acquisition down for us.
Yeah, thanks. So we're very excited about it, and it will contribute revenue this year. What we acquired is a 12-person software company that also provides some services, but all of their revenue drives from some software licenses, maintenance on software licenses, and then some professional services. Their heritage actually ties back to what's called substation automation, which is the integration from a software perspective of a lot of different types of equipment that utilities rely on. And in many circumstances inside a substation today, different equipment providers, Siemens, GE, ABB, Hitachi, right? Some of the largest OEMs in the world. That equipment always doesn't talk the same language. And so with substation automation and the heritage of Congruitive, so around how do they get these different types of devices to talk on a normalized capacity for the utilities to be able to rely on a multitude of different vendors, but normalize that data into their mission critical systems around supervisory control, something called SCADA, SCADA. What they've done recently is they've taken that core competency and that expertise and sort of protocol translation, and they've applied that through software on normalizing the data and the protocols, the language that different electric vehicle charging manufacturers are speaking, or different solar inverter companies and manufacturers of solar inverters, or inverters for battery walls, or microgrid controllers, right? There's a world opening up of companies that are bringing these technologies into the market. Not all of them talk the same language, not all of them talk the same protocol. So where we get very excited is what Congruitive has done, and they are at the forefront of this, is this language protocol conversion from different types of devices, all normalizing so that the utility doesn't care necessarily who the manufacturer is. They just can access and ultimately understand impact and then control over a variety of different electric vehicle charging station providers or fleet transportation providers or solar panel companies or battery and storage project companies. So I like to say it's the Google Translate of electric vehicles and distributed energy resources. What it does for us is as that software is integrated onto our smart grid platform, right? It will tunnel data from an electric vehicle charging station or solar panel all the way into the mission critical systems that the utility relies on today to ensure that you and I have power and don't get disrupted as things change.
Yeah.
I hope that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense to me. It's a pretty intriguing conversation that's probably underlooked as everyone just pays attention to the EV side. But like I said, I feel like this conversation is starting to come forefront. It is the utility is kind of a prehistoric setup right now, and it's going to take some evolution. That it's crazy to think that you guys are forefronting some of this. So it's going to be fun to see your story evolve here. But I appreciate your time today, Peter.
I'll give you one specific example if I can have 30 more seconds.
Yeah, for sure.
So if you think about, and you've seen the advertisements around Ford's F-150 Lightning electric vehicle, right? There's an advertisement that's here in the US of the lights go out at the home, someone runs out of the house, they plug in their F-150 and the lights come back on. Well, I don't know if all the lights would come back on, but in order to charge an electric vehicle F-150 Lightning, it's estimated that that truck is going to need about 19 kilowatt hours. That's a measurement that utilities speak to fully charge. The equivalent of that is running 6 central air conditioning units at someone's home on the hottest day of the year for hours. And so as you think about what that means to the utility, all of a sudden, they're going to have an electric vehicle like the F-150 plug into an outlet to be charged. That's going to change the amount of load or the amount of power that's needed at that specific home at that specific time, right? And that means it has a cascading impact on the rest of their grid relative to the power that they've got to deliver elsewhere.
Yeah.
And so the impact of having a mobile device that's both charging and potentially discharging is really problematic for the way the grid is structured today. And I agree wholeheartedly with you. Most investors and most people I speak to, they're very excited about EVs, myself included. I can't wait to have one and purchase one. But most people aren't thinking about what is it actually going to mean to reliably charge that vehicle. That's where the utility comes into play. And that's what Tantalus is working to help. So I didn't mean that was more than 30 seconds, my apologies, but give you some more specificity around the impact that those EVs are going to have, hence the acquisition of Congruitive and why we think we're putting ourselves in the right position to help utilities and create a compelling investment thesis for investors.
I don't think you could have offered better insight. On that note, folks, I want to know what you think about this industry in that comments section below. Consider subscribing as the story evolves. We'll be bringing the news down the wire here, but in light of it, stay cool, stay awesome. And as always, I look forward to catching you in the next one.
Thanks, Kyle.